to the Power Relay with Micah Clay. A series of conversations with the technicians, leaders, engineers, and innovators critical to ensuring power reliability, safety, education, and innovation. We discuss the many facets of the power industry with the unsung heroes who power the world in the 21st century. Sponsored by Southern Staffing Group. We support your power industry talent acquisition efforts. If it involves power, we have you covered. Plug in and join our host, Micah Clay, veteran, entrepreneur, and power enthusiast, as we delve into the world of power.
Welcome back to the Power Relay with Micah Clay, where we talk all things power, from startups and private equity to safety, testing, and the people shaping how our industry grows. Today's conversation dives deep into something that doesn't get talked about enough: what it's really like to sell your company to private equity. Not the polished press release version, but the founder's story, the emotions, the lessons, and the reality of stepping from owner to portfolio partner. Joining me are four leaders who've lived it firsthand. Brian Hall, founder of BCH Electrical Safety Consulting, who turned his passion for electrical safety into one of the most trusted training firms in the country. Jeff Kershner and Adam Brooks from Rosel, the engineering team known for its deep expertise in electrical testing and arc flash studies. And Christopher Casey, the former Army officer and growth-minded operator behind Monroe Infrared, a leader in infrared thermography and condition-based maintenance. All of these companies are now a part of Guidant Power, a growing powerhouse in the electrical services space. Together, they'll walk us through what the journey has been like, the calls, the due diligence, the culture shifts, and what happens after the ink dries. This one's not about spreadsheets or deal terms. It's about what it feels like building something. Let it go and still stay in the fight, just on a bigger stage. Let's get into it. Brian Hall is an electrician by trade who came up through his family's contracting world, moved into heavy industry via Alcoa, then Chrysler, then Perry Nuclear, where he led electrical maintenance and transitioned into the training department, teaching electrical safety and building curricula. He launched BCH to deliver safety training around Cleveland, then partnered with Rosel on arc flash studies, and while collaboratively growing together. Brian, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, Micah. I would say, first of all, that for me, electrical safety isn't just a job. It's really a mission. When I was a young electrician, I had a close call. I was shocked on 480 volts. I was standing up on a crane. I got knocked backwards. Had I fallen, I probably wouldn't be here today. So had I received proper electrical safety training, that probably wouldn't have happened. The moment really drove home that what we do is not just about earning a living, right? It's about keeping people safe, keeping them alive. That's the mission that has carried me throughout this journey of electrical safety training.
That is an awesome intro. And were there anything that came out of that, the incident? You took the 480. What were some of the ramifications that kind of really drove that point home for you?
Well, again, I think, a lot has changed over the years. This was back in the early 90s. We didn't receive a formal electrical safety training like we have today. I wasn't wearing fall protection. I mean, I think companies, we've grown a lot, right? A lot of things have changed, and safety has come a long way, much for the better.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And that's some awesome insights. And up next, we have Jeff Kershner, an engineer and Rosel leader known for rigorous arc flash study execution. Early on, he and Brian struck a simple pact. Rosel handles the engineering and BCH handles the training, freeing Jeff from a teaching role he didn't love and leveraging Rosel's national footprint to deliver faster, cleaner outcomes. Jeff, can you please tell our audience a little bit more about you?
Sure. I grew up in Western Kansas, where I learned what hard work and long hours meant. Became an electrical engineer at Kansas State. That's where I met Adam Brooks. After college, I took a job in a factory in Iowa, where I learned even more what long hours look like. In that factory, I was tasked with becoming a subject matter expert for electrical safety. After doing some research, Adam and I learned that maybe taking this craft to market would be a good opportunity to not only make money, but help keep others safe. So 15 and a half years ago, we formed Rosel, which was an electrical engineering firm to do just that. After a long journey of building the company, we sold to Shore Capital, which is a Chicago-based private equity, in 2024, and we became the platform for guided power, at which point it's interesting. Each point has kind of been a building block over more hard work. So, the journey with private equity has been awesome. It feels like we graduated to go to the next level, but it's also been a lot more work. Everything that we put in has grown into this. So it's been
I think that is fantastic. And one of the things that we see, and a lot of the things that's discounted, it feels like more so in society today, is that hard work aspect of it that you ping on. I can emulate or empathize with that, as I'm sure the rest of us can on that front. And it does take a lot to get there, and it's never easy. So for those out there that are struggling through that, make sure that you know it's going to take a lot to get there. Love that. All right. And up next, we have Adam Brooks. Adam Brooks is part of Rosel's commercial leadership engine alongside Jeff, where he played the sales relationship side of the Rosel BCH collaboration. A year ahead of Monroe BCH in the guidance journey, he and Jeff helped shape the PE roll-up learnings the rest of the group is now applying. Adam, can you give us a little bit more of backstory on your journey?
Yeah, as Jeff mentioned, we both met when we were going to college at Kansas State. I'm also originally from Kansas, and like him, we both shared a passion for working hard, both sort of in the job and away from the job. Like we always have had a lot of interest, and we're just sort of, we have this curiosity, right? So I'd say that curiosity about things really is what led us to start a business together to begin with. We were both interested in electricity. It's something that everyone needs, and sometimes it's overlooked. It's a sort of a hard to understand concept, and so we realized this is a great mission to not only help people help keep people safe, but also to help guide them in their journey to have safe, reliable power. So that was sort of a passion for us when we started this business. And then over the course of, I guess it's been 15 years now, we tinkered here and there to figure out, really how to grow. But honestly, we're not experts in business. So when we decided we really wanted to take things to the next level, it was private equity that ended up making the most sense.
That is awesome. And Christopher Casey was an Army Stinger platoon leader turned operator, first as a manufacturing manager and later regional distribution director for Nestle Waters, then as COO for an outsourced customer service support center operation, and then as VP of a transportation and logistics service company, expanding sixfold before his epiphany leading to purchasing Monroe Infrared and returning to the IR technology he'd used in uniform. Interestingly enough, Monroe was founded in 1984 by retired Air Force veteran Bruce Monroe, and under Christopher's leadership, Monroe grew from 6 to 28 people, shifting from primarily equipment sales to a service-heavy mix, and remained a veteran-owned small business until merging into Guidant earlier this year. Chris, you've had an interesting journey. Can you tell our audience a little bit more about yourself?
As for myself, as you mentioned, I had my epiphany to leave, larger business and operations to run my own shop. Identifying and spending time with Bruce Monroe became an option because I didn't want to start from scratch, but I did want to have a technology-based operation. And as you mentioned, too funny, 30 years later, I came back to infrared that I utilized as a Stinger platoon leader, very similar technology, now for different applications. As for us, I guess the easiest way to say this is I wasn't looking when Guidant Power came knocking on the door to just say hello and sort of ask the question of what if. And I understand as we're going through the process here, for the folks that are listening and watching, they're going to try and understand, what we did. for Jeff and Adam, a year and a half ago, for me about, 6 months back, like why we would even have a conversation. And I'll say to everyone listening, I said no to so many folks and closed conversations to so many folks because I wasn't really looking. I like what I'm doing. It's fulfilling. It was a different opportunity to be able to merge in and join a growing, really fast growing operation, as opposed to being sent out to go play golf, right? It was not a swap out. And that was intriguing enough for me to not basically close the door on Guidon and say, let's have a conversation then and learn, which hopefully will be something that between the four of us today, we can give the folks listening a little more insight to not be so afraid or not be so concerned that it's a cutthroat, do or die and everyone's going to get fired sort of fear factor. It's not that at all. But that's what I thought it was before I learned more about it. So I look forward to sharing what I can here, but it's been a great ride. The one thing no one will like is due diligence, but so what, right? We all get through it and we move ahead, and then we work on the part, which is growing business.
That is awesome. And to your point, that is one of those things that was an entering argument for me is like, especially in the power space, we see acquisitions and mergers and acquisitions and private equity just scooping up things along the way. And whenever and of course, I'm on the phone constantly all day with candidates and different folks. And we talk about the variety of things going on in the space. And one of the things that is definitely at the top of mind for most people and often causes a mass migration of folks from one entity to the next is the discussion of private equity coming in. I know Shermco was recently purchased. It's a great arbitrage opportunity for a recruiter for those who were worried about the turmoil and the shakeup. And so obviously it's definitely helpful for me. But it is also, I think, strongly misunderstood amongst technicians and junior folks and even leaders in the space who just haven't had the experience. Amongst the CEOs that I talk with on a frequent basis, private equity is constantly reaching out to these folks and trying to work deals. I talk with other small VC firms and small family offices and things, and electrical seems to be one of the hottest spaces, if you will, to kind of enter the arena with. And so this is going to be definitely, hopefully, telling and offering some insights to individuals who potentially are looking at that acquisition space. So thank you again to all of you for hopping on with me. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into our question set here. Adam, you were one of the first acquisitions. Can you give us a look inside what that looked like, who reached out, and what made you take that first call when so many weren't a fit?
Thanks. I'll just start by piggybacking on what Christopher said, which was, we weren't looking to sell. That was never something that we were honestly even thinking about. Of course, being in business, you're going to take calls. So we're always open to talk to anyone that wants to talk to us, whether it's about a sale or a partnership or anything. So we've been open to talks, and we talked to half a dozen people about selling or partnership or what that might look like. So this wasn't a new conversation, but it was a different conversation. So anyone that's been in this position, they've probably taken a variety of calls. The conversations can go a bunch of different ways. And so, first and foremost, we weren't ready to hang up our hats. We're not super old, I guess. So, we're still interested in working. We wanted stability for the rest of our team members. And like you're saying, we sort of viewed private equity as a little bit of a boogeyman, thinking, oh, it's a bad thing. So we were a little guarded when we first had the calls. So when the team from Shore first reached out to us, it was a little bit different. So it was interesting that they did not pretend to be experts in our field. They were the first people to say, we know nothing about this. You are the experts. We want you to remain the experts. We want to keep your team. Like that's what's important. We're trying to grow this. What we will provide is sort of a bench and a teamwork of experts to help you in that journey. So they very early on brought people to talk to us that they had already recruited to help with this. And I mean, they were, industry names, people that had decades of experience. So it was just that it was more of a partnership really than anything. and it was building a winning team of people. And that was really some of the big difference. And then, it's one thing to talk, but then they actually were able to sort of show that by, hey, these are the people we're already bringing in to partner. We're not gonna promise exactly what the outcome is. We'll promise the process, but it's up. You're the experts. We're not going to tell you how to do this. So that was interesting and different for us.
That's very, very intriguing. It sounds like Guidon took a different approach than many. And again, I talked to many, small family offices that are looking to buy, and it sounded like that was very thorough. And I got that from Paul. Paul Decker I believe he's the CEO of Guidon, correct? If I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
So Paul made the initial introduction, was like, hey, I think we're doing stuff differently. Opening up our book of CEOs here and allowing you to have a conversation, which is very unique in its own right. Not many people would want to open up the kimono, if you will, and kind of let folks into that process and go from that. So it sounds like it's definitely had a substantial impact on both the talent, the workflow side, and things of that nature. What else do you think was kind of a primary benefit coming out of that? Are you noticing a substantial change in frameworks and communications and workflows and things of that nature?
Yeah, again, it's been the teamwork or the team of people that have been brought on. And so, from the beginning, we were always laser focused on being great at one thing. And as we discussed what's the next chapter for us, we realized if we're going to grow in the way this industry is headed, you can be great at one thing, but it's going to be hard to really succeed as a business if you're great at only one thing. And so, it sort of became apparent if we're going to be great at multiple things, we need to have a different team. And that's really what's happened. Guidon's just brought on other members of that team, like Christopher and others, and we've really been able to just develop that bench of experts in their respective areas so that we can be great across multiple things.
That is awesome. And Chris, what differences did you see between headlines about billion-dollar PE and your micro reality under 20 million? How did that help sort through the various acquisition pitches, and what made Guidon stand out to you?
Okay, great question. As I mentioned, and I'm sure Brian, Adam, and Jeff also, I was literally getting a half dozen plus calls a month from people. Not all private equity. Some, venture capital, some, this and that, lots of people. I represent somebody, which generally means there's private equity behind it. Absolutely. And they're using them to do research. I was always of the mindset, once I realized what they were looking for, the private equity side for me, they weren't really interested in me or interested in my company, was if you weren't about a $20 million operation or bigger, they didn't really want to talk to you. So for those listening that are thinking and going through the same thing, I just started using that. Much like I think Adam said, I'll answer the phone if someone asks for me, but I'll just say, oh, you're interested to talk. Well, that's great. Like, we're less than 20 million. Do you really want to have a conversation? And oftentimes that was it. They would fade off, right? Well, we're kind of looking for, at least 10, 20 million higher. We're going to fade away. That saved me a lot of time. I probably spent some time with folks that I should have figured out how to weed out a little faster that, again, weren't really interested. The approach that Paul took with Guidon was, I'd say it was indirect on purpose, because he just actually saw a posting that I did, which is rare. I do 3 or 4 a year out on LinkedIn, leadership related, usually something like that. And he commented on it, and he and I just struck a conversation up, where I ended up asking him, like, well, what do you do? Right. And that's literally how we started, and before I knew any of the other side. So clearly, Paul's a very smart guy. He's a great businessman. So he began with the end in mind. But if I wasn't interested, he would have, closed off the conversation and we would have moved on. I asked him, I learned a little more. And then he was very open. And I'm sure Adam and Jeff and Brian got this too. It was, okay, here's a little about the process. It's micro. It's not big. Read a little more, do some homework, read some things that Shore Capital has done, and then let's talk more. So it wasn't let me tell you everything in the world. He's like, I'll tell you some and I'll give you information to do some homework, which I appreciated, because then it was like, all right, well, let me actually check this stuff out a little deeper and I'll come back to you. So low pressure. I appreciated the low pressure aspect of it. It wasn't like, hey, make a decision, let's go yesterday.
Right.
Because again, I wasn't looking. And I'd been pushing back on people who kept, sort of knocking at the door like, hey, we're interested in your company. I want to buy you. Like, no, you don't. Not if you come in like, not at all. So that was, for me, a pleasant surprise, and maybe a learning curve for everyone else that might consider this, that is us, the same as us, as a business owner, in figuring out what that exit might be, or what really for us, we didn't exit out. Ours was a transition. Will we exit eventually? Sure, we're not going to live forever, but we weren't ready to go. And the opportunity to still be involved and now realistically take a lot of risk off the table, so that it's not, one company checking account. And every time something happens and a capital need comes up, you're not just writing a big check or having to go to the bank. Those are fantastic advantages for sure to have moved over into being part of a larger group.
That is all fantastic, and I can definitely see the appeal of that. As most small business owners, and I'm sure you guys can also empathize with, is the cash flow constraints that you typically come, and that's one of those big triggers that kind of encourage folks to go look at those private equity or something. Again, you could take out the small business loans and do all that other stuff, but knowing and having less of that stress about the cash flow constraints that could possibly be just alleviates a lot of the stress off of an owner. Trying to make sure that you have the salaries covered and all the other overhead that's required. And even if you've got good cash reserves, it's still enough to keep me up at night. We're sitting pretty fat with where we'd like to be and getting ready to bring on a couple of new hires. And that's definitely one of those top concerns in my purview, is like, okay, we're doing this. It's the cash flows. Where are you going to be? So I can imagine that is definitely a substantial benefit in the construct of working with a company such as Guidant.
Absolutely. I mean, not being the original company in, I'll speak to the point, which is we were the first edition, right? After the platform was established with Jeff and Adam and Brian. And we came in, several months after that, as they laid a lot of the foundational work to be ready. And no one's going to say integrating is easy, right? It's just figuring out how to communicate, how to talk. Who does this? Well, I did this before. Who does this now? And we're still figuring that out. But it's not impossible. It's not hard, right? It's not rocket science. Those are the things that are just different. If you've been running your own business, like I had in business for 14 years, Adam and Jeff for 15 years, it's a little different, right? With the thought of, hey, are we, backtracking, and we suddenly, got a boss. It's like, well, you're still running the operation. They're still running Rosel. I'm still running Monroe, but we're now figuring out how to run together and run a whole lot farther and faster as Guidant. That's a nice thing.
That is awesome. And is there a substantial amount of crossover? I understand we've got thermography, we've got engineering, we've got electrical safety. How has that process been? And this is kind of an open construct question to everybody. Are y'all are there substantial hurdles? Do y'all work together, collaborate well? Is the picture kind of coming together as to how you'll build the services around one another?
Yeah, we have weekly meetings together. A lot of our customers share both of our services. So, we're slowly integrating. We came in as completely separate entities, but now we're integrating together. And then we're also merging with other companies that come in with both services. So that integration is going to become deeper and deeper.
Gotcha. That is awesome. And definitely a way to do it is kind of like collecting the small outfits that are, doing great on their own. And then now we're just kind of, expanding on and making their impact exponential is kind of what it appears to be. And Brian, during our initial conversation, we discussed some of the encumbrances your team was facing. What problem or ceiling were you trying to solve? Was it capital, capacity, succession, or simply doing fewer of the jobs yourself? As we all know, as entrepreneurs, we wear all the damn hats. So what's your take on that?
Mike, I would tell you it was all of the above, honestly. I would say this: when we were growing Rosel, BCH Electrical Safety. We had this collaboration, and we were growing the training side of the business. But we could only get to a certain point, right? We could grow to a certain point. It was either I was killing myself, traveling all over the country, providing electrical safety training. But then a month later, we're kind of shaking the bushes looking for our next training job, and it got to be, at sometimes really frustrating. And so I knew that if we were going to move this business to the next level, we were going to need some help. And then the other thing, you can't be I'll call it single point of failure, right? If I get sick, I'm in the hospital, whatever, I get hit by a bus, we're going to have customers that weren't going to be serviced. And so we really needed to move to the next level. And I'll piggyback kind of like on what Adam was saying earlier, that I'm an electrician by trade, not necessarily a great businessman or have that skill set. And so this is really, for me, what was attractive about coming and partnering with Shore Capital and Guide and Power. They really provided us with a lot of resources. Now, not only financial, but I would tell you is that we have been able to attract world-class talent in all areas of the business, marketing, sales, you name it. They have the resources to be able to bring these people in, and really this is the next step, right? How do you scale this business? And I would never be able to offer a compensation package or something like that to somebody of this caliber, right? And so this has really been one of the great things about partnering with Shore Capital and Guide and Power. Like Adam and Jeff had mentioned earlier, and as well as Christopher, we've built a great team and just really putting us on a path for success.
And I think you nailed the nail on the head. And of course, I can empathize with, again, a lot of the plights of wearing all the hats and things. And I read quite a bit with regards to leadership and things. And one of those universal knowns is it's a different skill set altogether. So you can typically bootstrap it, grind it out, hit up to that $1 million a year, maybe 5 if you're lucky. But then it just gets to a point to where we're tapped out on resources. Again, the CapEx, and no matter what you're doing, or your total addressable market and all those things come to bear. And it does require a different skill set. And it sounds like Guidon has brought that to the table for you guys. Again, the marketing, I do tons of that stuff over here and drive that, but I'm dropping the ball on sourcing or whatever it may be. That's the cash producing side of it. So it's, again, just guarding your time, protecting your time, and then, leveraging in your particular instance with Guidon to really expand and probably buy back some of your time by being acquired that way. Is that pretty accurate?
I would say yes. Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
Those are universal struggles, right, for most of the entrepreneurs. And so, like I said, I feel at home in this conversation whenever we're going through all these different struggles, trials, and tribulations. Mm-hmm. Jeff, what were some of the things that mattered most or enticed you towards Guidon? Was it rollover equity, earnouts, leadership role, post-close, alignments on culture, mission, or something totally different? And I know we're kind of hitting on the same topics, but I think it's important to kind of reemphasize those things.
It was all of the above. And when Christopher was answering a little bit ago, I was like, "You're taking all of my answers," and same with Brian. So, our company wasn't big enough that we could have just sold and walked away. We knew that from the start. So understanding that we'd be along for the ride meant that equity was going to be important and worth the risk to us. We were a small group and we were really close to each other. So, half of the company was in my wedding or at my wedding. So having our team protected, having, Adam and Brian protected was extremely important. And we had employees that had been with us for a while. So definitely wanted to make sure that regardless of what step we took, that we had their interest in mind. The quality of our product was also very important. We're an engineering company, so the culture of leadership would dictate quality. If leadership didn't understand how important our work was, then quality could suffer, and ultimately people's safety could suffer. And that has been, there's been absolute alignment company-wide for how that's handled. So everything had to be the right fit. And then what we also learned later on was things important to us that maybe we didn't know at the time. So, for example, the diligence that was performed on us during the M&A process was in hindsight, very eye-opening for me. You always think about, like, if we would go and buy another company and then merge together, you could offer the same growth. But seeing what kind of diligence was performed, I have no idea how I would have even started down that path to purchase another company or merge with another company. So, that certainly has become important, how Shore and Guidant is just doing the overall process to move forward.
I love that. And I think it's very important too to take a pause here and mention that to the small business owners, those folks that have a passion or a purpose in life that they want to pursue, and they may not understand the due diligence aspects and aren't necessarily forecasting a purchase or something 5 to 10 years out. And again, I talk with small family guys all the time, guys and gals all the time. And one of the things is typically deals fall apart at due diligence. And it's usually due to a lack of accounting, no GAAP financials in place, and it's in total disarray. And again, time kills all deals for the most part, right? It sounds like Paul's a little bit more understanding and working through that stuff. But would you say that would be one of the things that was kind of eye-opening about it? Or did you guys have your financials and due diligence pretty squared away before the fact?
Well, I wouldn't say that we received an A+, but we had good documentation. We put the Shore team through a pretty good race to try to figure out how to interpret everything. But I also, like, everything went really smoothly, and I didn't want to jinx anything. Like, I didn't tell anybody, I didn't tell family. It was just like, let's just get through this, and it went smooth. But I can only imagine what some of that process would look like for other companies.
I can imagine. Was that pretty much replicable across, or did anybody have any stories to tell on the due diligence side? Because like I said, again, with the small business owners and stuff, we do some consulting on that front. And it is shocking the amount of stuff that you see that just isn't being tracked appropriately and things like that. Or were you guys, we're not telling on each other, right? But was it pretty much at least an A-level effort from everybody else? Brian, Chris?
I guess if I was to be honest, I'd say, we were using QuickBooks Online, for our business. And we were fairly thorough about it. We had the CPA doing our taxes, but bookkeeping and the tracking day-to-day was all internal. We were pretty good about it. I mean, the business had already been around, 20 plus years before I got involved. And I knew enough to be dangerous to try and make sure, from my standpoint, which was, we're never going to lie, cheat, or steal. So I don't ever want to worry about, the IRS or somebody coming back saying that we're falsifying any information or process. So due diligence was just a PITA. There's just no way to call it anything else, because there's such a demand for so much information to try and help, in this case, Guidant and Shore understand what our business was doing, and not so much exactly how, but just what we were doing, right? That was the due diligence side. What do all the numbers say in every different direction and every different slice of the pie over and over again? And then there were disagreements, without a doubt, and a few crap that came out because of differences in accounting processes. Again, nothing that was wrong, just a different way of, well, we don't recognize it until then, but we are. Right. Crap. Okay. And having to come together. That's why everyone looks at due diligence as it's not deadly, but it's just no fun. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, because you get through it and you just rake over numbers back and forth, not with the intent. I want to say this for folks who are listening that are us months behind. It's not trying low the price that you would get for your business. That's not the design. It's basically, you might find stuff that actually raises the price of your business. That was us a little bit, and we found something that brought it back. So we moved up and down a couple of times in the process, which was kind of crazy to me. But now I can say it all made sense, because nothing's hidden, right? Nothing is going to be lost in this. If you think you can hide something bad as a skeleton, it will come out in due diligence. Might as well kiss that right off, because it's going to show up, and you don't want it to then, because then you really are trying to tank yourself in the middle of a deal. Guidant, Paul, Shore has been extremely upfront, right? Nothing hidden. I never felt like they were unwilling to answer any question throughout the complete process. So kudos there. I mean, they can't do the due diligence work for you, It is the Navy term, I believe, Micah, is embrace the suck.
All day, every day.
Right?
That is fantastic. And Chris, you have a very unique experience because you went out and you acquired Monroe, and then were acquired by Guidant. What was how did your due diligence, in your personal opinion, stack up to what you did on Monroe versus what Guidant did for you?
Oh my goodness, that's a gloriously funny question in the sense that most of us, and probably most folks that are listening, watching this, are going to be where I was, which are like, oh, hey, I got a CPA, or I've got an accountant, or someone who knows financing and accountant, and I'll talk to them and I'll get financials, income statements, balance sheet, cash flow for the last 3 years, and I'll just talk to them. I'll take notes and I'll be good to go. That's what I did. That is, it's like comparing Pee Wee football to the NFL. I mean, there is just such a difference in what we often understand as individuals going in to do. I didn't do due diligence. I looked at the last 3 years, and and it looked good. And and watching cash flows and checking statements, not to the level of confirming everything really did happen, right? Because I guess they're probably bad players, make stuff up. I mean, that wasn't us. I know that's nobody that's on this call here, but it confirms it. And that's the process of a PE due diligence, is they're thorough. They understand how to do this. Shore's done 1,000 company purchases. That's just crazy. They've done it 999 more times than I have. So they've got more practice, right? They know what to look for. And that's the key, is you're not going to get screwed over in the process. When you're going to get screwed, because you're going to go through the process, but you're going to come out the other end, and then you're going to say, okay, great. Now we can commiserate and support the next companies that are coming to join the Guidant family. In fact, we have just recently, right? And that's great. It's good to be supportive because we're all on the same team.
And I just find that, and I asked that question specifically for those small business owners that are out there that are doing some of the smaller acquisitions. And I've evaluated a couple deals of my own, thinking I know exactly what I'm looking for, and doing it in the due diligence. And no idea. The PE firms, the small family offices, operate at such a higher level than what I could ever pretend to do based on the resources that they bring to bear and things like that. And I figure that is worth mentioning for the small businesses out there that are perhaps looking at doing an acquisition. Go ahead and take on a broker. Take on somebody who has done this level of work. Don't try to absorb all that yourself, or you're inevitably probably going to get bit. It sounds like it worked out very, very well. So kudos to you on the due diligence that you did, and you've now taken it through another acquisition. But that is definitely a point worth mentioning for somebody who is in that space and looking to even buy a company down the road just to grow small, even an insignificant or not so insignificant amount, but to make sure that, leverage the assets that are out there that are available to you, to make sure you don't bite your own self in the butt, basically.
I'd say that's a fantastic recommendation. I mean, I did go get a business broker when I bought Monroe, and I knew nothing about that prior to my epiphany and wanting to have my own company. But the experience, like you said, there's so many great resources out there. Do not try and go it alone. And even when if you talk to somebody like Guidant or someone else that's PE backed for the funding, to try and build a smart group that's going to come together and be able to grow faster than we all could do individually. Right? That's what it kind of came down to. That's what I wanted. If I'm like, truth really be told, was I connected with Paul, which opened my ears enough to listen. Learning the process made me intrigued enough to know I wasn't being asked to step out. Right? It's not a replacement. It's not a lifestyle swap out. Someone becomes me, like I became Bruce Monroe. I took over Monroe. I wouldn't want to do that. Yeah, removing some risk is fantastic, but I wanted to grow faster too. Right? I'd been with a couple previous organizations I'd grown through and then had progressed forward. Here it was, okay, let's see what we can do in the last several years, whatever my decision turns out to be. I'm older than all these other guys on the call. So I'm probably going to step out before they do, but I want to grow a whole lot because growing's fun.
It really is.
It really is the fun side of business. And I can't say that loud enough. So anyone who knows what it is to grow a business, and you're living from your pocketbook and your checkbook and things, what could you do if you didn't have to worry about, I really need another sales guy. I really need another technician. I really need a bulldozer, or, whatever it is. And affording that slows you down. Like, we'll do that next year. We'll do that in 6 months, right? We're not stressed about that here. We got to justify the decision, but then we go.
That is fantastic. And I can definitely feel those pain points as somebody who is still privately owned and trying to grow. Everything you mentioned is hitting the nail on the head. This will release after it happens. And I'm kind of like you guys. I like to work in silence, right? And then show the outcomes later. And we're getting ready to bring on a director level equity partner in the business and a new recruiter. And it's planning to that. I've been wanting to do this for 3+ years. Again, it was finding culture fit and making sure that we, kind of got along very well for that. And finally found someone that'll work after 3 years of searching for that individual that'll join December 1st. And even then, it's still scary, right? Because it's still the trust equation and all those other things. But I just simply didn't have the capital, and I wasn't in a place to where I felt comfortable enough to make that decision prior to this point. So to have that as an option to go in and really just expand your growth curve is definitely an awesome thing to have. And it sounds like it's done that for all of you. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just to reiterate on those points, the big issue is time here, right? So you mentioned you're looking for someone, and finding that fit can take you months or years. And that was really the same thing for us. It's not to say that we couldn't find the right candidates for any of these roles, but each of these candidates, like say the last 10 people we hired at Guidance, each one of those are important positions, and we might have spent a year looking for the right fit for that single person. And instead of a year, the connections that the team has, we're able to find a better person than we would have been able to find, and a 10th of the time. So it just makes everything go faster.
It really does. And to your point, it's about leveraging those other services within a company, right? Your marketing, your ownership and all that. It's just wearing all the dang hats. And so like, I want to do this, but I also have to be work to the stuff that's billable, right? So I'm doing that. And then we're doing the marketing. And, if I'm recruiting for everybody else, I don't have the time to recruit for myself. Whereas now under the PE umbrella, you have all these other entities that are in place that can take that off of your plate, essentially. Is that kind of what we're getting at? It sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably at least 5 to 10 times faster that we're able to move than if we were trying to do this ourselves.
Absolutely. And then this one's kind of an open-ended question for you guys. As small business owners, one of the things that is always at the top of my mind is taking care of the teams you build. And we've kind of touched on that a little bit. But in the process, how did you protect your teams and reassure them about the jobs, the benefits, the growth paths through diligence and then day one and beyond? And I'll leave that one open. Jeff, you look like you're ready. So let's rock.
Yeah, I would say from our side, we were close. We had a good culture and a good trust between everybody. So we basically just told the team, and they said, "Congrats, that's awesome. What's next?" I would say it was pretty darn easy from our side.
That is fantastic. And rare, honest. I mentioned earlier, that's one of the biggest arbitrage opportunities we have as recruiters is when a PE event goes down. And again, you were smaller organizations whenever you were acquired. So you had already kind of had that, you don't have the bureaucratic spread, if you will, of they still, I imagine, know you guys personally, Jeff and Adam, from that perspective, and in a smaller organization. So I don't think you have to overcome that quite as much as say a $50 to $100 million organization or beyond. Anyone else kind of want to share their experiences on that topic?
I would say, Micah, for me, it was a huge green flag when I first talked to Paul. You can tell right away if someone actually cares about people or they're just trying to chase numbers on a spreadsheet. And I think if you talk to Paul and honestly everybody at Guide and Power through their initial process, you got that impression right away. Really care about people, and the culture is fantastic.
That is awesome. And my intro call with Paul was the exact same. Very transparent, very open, very humble. A lot of the folks that are in the acquisition space, they kind of get, they smell blood in the waters, and it's a shark circling, and you just don't get that when you talk to Paul. So I couldn't agree with you more on that front.
I'll share my perspective because, we were the first next company, right, after establishing Guide and Power with Rosel. And I will say, and again, I'm sure for so many folks that are listening to this, we all want to protect our employees, right? It's just, if you don't, then why do you run a small company, right? You're kind of missing the point. If you're just in it for money, go do something different. Lots of ways to make money. If you're running a company, especially a service organization like we all have, then you got to care about folks. For me, I knew people were going to be nervous, and I had massive butterflies leading right into telling, all of my employees, because they're spread like 8 different states. So we had to do it virtually, right? Versus getting everybody in front where you can physically see them and try and get belly to belly, stuff like that. And I stressed about it, and we tried to, dot every I, cross T, be prepared, all that. And we still had probably half the people, even though we said, this is how it works, we're going to grow, everybody's stable, nobody's getting replaced, you're not getting fired. This doesn't mean we're consolidating. This isn't big business private equity. This isn't the $100 million, billion-dollar combination of giants where they say, oh, hey, all the accounting, you're redundant. You're all gone, right? Oh, all of this shipping and receiving, whatever, redundant. So we don't have any of that. Like, these are small businesses coming together to start forming a bigger business. And no matter what we said, I still had, and I think I still even have a few that are, oh yeah, no, you're just not telling me the truth. No, my job's in danger, and I'm going to get fired. This isn't how it works. I've read about this. I've heard about this. And in some cases, what we missed is we had some employees that had dealt with it, and we blew it. We didn't know it. They dealt with it a year before in a different company that came in, said everything we did. Oh, you're solid. You're guaranteed. You're going to be here. 3 weeks later, they all got fired and offered to come back as 1099s. And they had a really bad taste in their mouths. So for us, I felt like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I missed that when we were vetting through thinking about the process, which was to make sure we probably should talk to them individually first. They've realized now, because we're several months into it, like, well, shoe hasn't dropped yet. I sure hope it still doesn't, right? And some folks are over the hump. But I can't emphasize enough that you just have to keep reminding folks that, hey, you're important. We're paying attention to you. Your input's, here. We don't want you to go anywhere. Like, if we didn't want you here, we probably would have gotten you out of the company before we did that, the merger in the first place. Truly, right? Why cure you in to let you out? But it's such a great question that you pose up for that, because that's a fear factor thing we just have to be aware of. Because
and in hindsight, Chris, do you think in that particular instance that it had you kind of let them in? So I'm one of those. I want to get the deal sealed before I talk through it and keep it under wraps and all that other stuff. Do you think that that situation may have changed slightly had you kind of included the employees in that process? I know it's not really the most. It would be hard to do, right, without kind of letting the secret out, if you will. So I don't know that it could be done, but you think that might have changed the dynamic a little bit had that been hypothetically possible?
I mean, speaking for myself, I had to include just a few people in to survive and get through the due diligence, right? So I had to bring a few in under the blanket for that side, senior managers and whatnot. Honestly, I thought about it almost ad nauseum, and no, it really wouldn't have made a difference. From my history, a little further back, 20, 30 years back, I've been on the acquiring side of some larger companies, right? And then like a division manager where I came in and was integrating in new operations and meeting people and telling them the same honest answer, which is, nope, your division joins in with ours. We're going to now be one bigger operation. Nobody's getting laid off. No one's getting replaced. The same pushback of telling people in advance just makes them worry about it that much longer.
See that.
So because I really did. I think I even maybe talked to Paul about this at one point, whether, would there be any advantage that he's ever known to do this? And it's always been no, because people's mind race on the warrior. They don't hear you the moment past when you say, we're going to merge the company, we're going to sell the company and merge in with someone else. Instantly, it's like, oh my gosh.
I can see that. So in hindsight, no, I think it is probably best just to let it ride and kind of deal with it after the announcement. So or at least that's what it sounds like. And at least you put the thought into that as well. So definitely awesome. And Adam, as one of the first partners, what changed immediately versus what stayed Rosel, BCH, while integrations hummed in the background?
That's a good question. I think, one thing we've probably talked about a couple times here is change. So people are always afraid of change in general. The idea of joining private equity is scary because there's a change, right? But it's, on the other hand, you really want change. If you don't change, you will not exist after either a short or a medium amount of time, right? So it's really kind of important that we embrace some sort of change. Being part of the platform, I would say there was a lot of change and there was no change. So the sort of base business operations, there was absolutely no change. For us, it was just a lot of other things that we had to carry on our backs, in addition to our day-to-day work that we had been doing for the past decade. I think from the perspective of most of the rest of the people in the company, there was really practically no change. It was just, hey, here's some new people that are coming in to help. But really, I'd say for the rest of the team, there was almost no change. I mean, I think you look at from team member to team member, some of the change has been more than others, but if nothing else, we've just been able to sort of focus their efforts on hopefully things that are more important and impactful than giving them as wide a range of tasks that they have to perform.
What about for you personally, outside of the employees and things like that? How much of a change did it have on your day to day?
It's if anything, it's certainly been more work. So we're still sort of bearing the brunt of the day-to-day operations plus the extra things that we need to take on to really help the company grow. So all the growth efforts, more sales effort, marketing effort, integration effort. So we're hopefully transitioning some of that day-to-day work. That's the end goal. That's kind of the reason why we went down this path. But it's been a bit of a slow process, and I think a lot of people have this idea that, oh, you're getting purchased, things change tomorrow, and I think at least for most people I've ever had conversations with, it's really not like that. It's more of a gradual change, and so you shouldn't expect that there's going to be a light switch tomorrow.
I think that is probably one of the most salient takeaways that I've heard, because a lot of people are thinking, and it's just like you think you're going to grow your company. We had goals of being at 5 million by year 3, and it was very grandiose in my mind and getting there. And then you want to hold yourself to that those goals and trying to struggle to get there and do it. Now you're doing it collectively amongst a bunch of other folks as well, but it's always going to take longer than you initially think it will, right? There's always going to be hurdles that have to be overcome, new systems, issues with software, getting everybody on board with the changes in that dynamic, and having change agents that can work through that kind of stuff. So it definitely, in my experience, takes far longer than I thought it would take. Is that pretty accurate, Adam?
Yeah, I think it takes longer, but it's it's kind of like raising a kid, where the years are short, but the days are long.
Absolutely.
And it's you look back a year later and you say, wow, we have really grown a lot. We have changed a lot of things, but from day to day, it really feels like nothing's changing.
It's the incremental process growth that's in there. Then you just get to look back in hindsight, like you said, end of year, and be like, oh, we did actually accomplish some stuff this year. That is awesome. And Jeff, one of the biggest fears I've heard owners talk about is having to work for someone else. What actually changed in your weekly rhythm, and which metrics are or if the metrics have changed, which metrics are kind of driving your behaviors now?
Well, I would say that we are probably more regimented with our goals and timelines. Whenever you own your own company, you say, let's go out and do this. Whenever it happens, it happens. That's kind of, there's certainly some things that are higher priority than others. So you would kind of set your high priority items and go after them, and then other things get in the way. So now it's a little more structured, definitely a lot more structured, and we have guidance from others that have been there and done that. We have our weekly and monthly check-ins. So if we say we're going to do something, then we have to answer to why it didn't get done. So I would say we're all pretty motivated individuals, but having some accountability always helps as well. One of our previous goals was to implement some database, a database in our company, and that was something we would have tried to do ourselves. And now we can implement a team of people, or they'll outsource it, and per the direction of management, we're going to outsource this, and we're going to bring in an entire team of people. So Adam and Brian and I, we used to do everything, and now we have a CFO that focuses on finance.
Beautiful.
We have a VP of sales that focuses on sales, and everyone can spend time on what they're good at. So, it's just, I would say a lot of what Adam said is, I'm going to echo on that, but we do a lot of exactly the same of what we did. It seems like we're able to be more focused. And I would say the goal is that years from now, we're even more hyper focused on what we're good at, as opposed to, okay, let me answer sales. Let me take care of some finance. Let me, now do some engineering. So it's kind of like we're molding something. We're finally starting to see the shape of it.
I love that, and I think you bring up a phenomenal point in the accountability piece. And I'll ask the question to the rest of you. As a small business owner, again, we're wearing all the hats. Everything is a priority. We're always putting out fires, and one of those things, like, if I'm not feeling it, I won't get to my desk till 9 a.m. Right? I'm retired once, doing this again, and so trying to hold myself to account is a little bit more difficult than it is having the accountability of say the equity partner I'm bringing in. He's already holding me to account to stuff. So having some sort of structure or framework, do you guys think that is helpful and kind of led to you being more productive? Adam, go ahead. I see you smiling.
You don't have a choice. I mean, it's
exactly.
You're like you're not a single horse pulling the cart anymore. There's a whole team, and then you don't get to just try to stand there if you're tired, or they're going to be dragging you along. So, I mean, it's great to have the accountability. But yeah, you really don't have a choice.
But it comes from both directions. We have customers that are, the services that we provide are, depending on the customer, can be very, very important and time sensitive. So we have that accountability, and we also have accountability of our management team as well. So, we're being pulled in multiple directions.
And that's going to be just a generalized expectation. That seems to be something that's often reiterated in these conversations. Is like you're gaining momentum with working with a private equity group, but realize what you thought was hard work in the initial or the beginning stages is definitely only going to become harder in that process. You're going to be held accountable to more things, more responsibilities and things like that. So there's still going to be the trials and tribulations. You're not on easy street once you're acquired. There's usually going to be an uptick and momentum there, and kind of doing that. So I think that is worth at least stopping and holding for a second to make sure that just because you're being bought, unless it's a clean exit, but if you're being left on board, you're going to be held accountable to that. It's not going to get easier. You have more resources available to you, but the struggles aren't necessarily going to get easier. You just have a different set of problems.
We always, we had our team
That would
members
be
already. Yeah, our team members were relying on us, and now we have more team members, and they're still relying on us. So it's just the same thing, just more of it.
Absolutely.
Micah, we all entered into this with one goal, and that is to grow this new company and make it very successful. And so each one of us have to do our part. And so we're accountable to one another.
That's huge. And again, as an independent owner, you count on yourself, right? And so now that you're working with, I always use the label tribe, right? You have your own new tribe of individuals that are striving towards the same outcomes, and you now have to be accountable to those partners. So I couldn't agree with you more, Brian. And Chris, what is one concrete example where another Guidant brand helped you win or serve a customer better, or perhaps better asked as what is the benefit of partnering with the other verticals under Guidant Power? We've already mentioned that you guys work together very well, but are you starting to see some of those benefits of working together?
Great question. Glad I got to field this one. The answer is yes and yes. And I'll say it in both directions. So we primarily were doing infrared electrical and other infrared inspections for clients as a service. We do a little bit. We did like this much for arc flash because we didn't have, an Adam and Jeff, professional engineers that were on staff. It wasn't our forte. So we were outsourcing that, but we weren't actively trying to go sell and get it, right? So what we knew, what Paul knew, what Guidant, everybody knew coming in as well, you package different services that are complementary together, and now you build in a customer base that's already warm to, that knows who you are. So for us to be able to start talking to our clients about Arc Flash, it's a great door opener, right? We're still learning to get better and smoother and more efficient at it, but we've already had successes move ahead and vice versa, right? What's the advantage for us? Arc flash generally is once every 5 years. Infrared is annual, right? NFPA 70B, and or might even be quarterly, right? We have clients that are quarterly. So we want to stay with the client as frequently as we can because, memories can fade, people can change, get promoted, retire, and whatnot. So sometimes if you're not there a really long time, there's a chance someone could kind of forget, well, who did we use last time? Oh, let's just go to bid, or something crazy like that. The other piece for us is we provide infrared thermography training certification. So Brian's piece with the electrical safety training and skills is like just fantastic because whether we're doing a service for a client or an arc flash or an IR, they inevitably, because most clients are industrial, they need the training that Brian created. So we're always looking for how we can be concierge is kind of the word, right? Can we provide more services that are truly value added, or we're not, forcing anything on someone, but they realize, and this is true of a lot of clients, people would all agree, well, if you can do IR and arc flash and safety training for us, great, right? So we don't have to go to 3 different people. That's the direction that we're moving in to try and, again, strategically find smart additions for our group to be able to provide value in. And I'll say, one example from yesterday. You guys will all laugh because nobody even knows this one yet. Had a company with sort of a unique name and initials, not that well known, not IBM or something, but we were working on, because we also sell equipment. We sell infrared cameras as a complement to training. So my sales manager, Ted, was working on one with this, ABC, and it was like ABC structurals or something. And in our system, we had a conflict of like, wait, this is already here. It's like ABC Aero doing an inspection for. We came at them purely by chance because I checked to find out if we had done it on purpose. Big, fairly big company. So we're doing services for 2, which will be able to allow us to kind of flip right over and talk to continue that out. But we had no idea, right? And something like that, and we would have missed out. The one for the IR inspection came through because they were a Rosel arc flash client. And it come in awesome. That way. The sales rep had just said, hey, we do IR now. And I said, great, let's get scheduled.
Easy day. It's a one and done. And to your point, it's a package solution. So why the heck not? And that is a great example to use. Jeff, what is taking longer than you've expected, and what moves faster now that you have the deeper pockets and the shared infrastructure?
Well, I would say getting an infrastructure in place. Adam mentioned turning on the light switch. We kind of, in my mind, I thought that would just happen. Well, I would say the fault is on my own shoulders, because understanding that we needed additional support was something that I knew, and I needed to put it into place, or voice the fact that it needed to be put into place. So we also thought that M&A would just bring in somebody, Christopher's going to bring in a whole bunch of extra engineers that he just had sitting around that's going to be able to support us. Well, that's never going to happen. Not with our size, or not with the target M&A that we have. So I thought that would go quicker, but that's partially our fault. Now, what goes faster is pretty much everything else. So I'll give you an example. We had a customer. We learned that they had multiple sites, and we said, "Wow, I didn't know they had this many sites. How do we get in touch with them?" And one of our contacts in sales says, "I think we know somebody that sits on their board." And the next day, we had a call with their CFO.
Wow.
I mean, it was just like, something we could have fished for, tried to get to that guy. It would take us 10 months, and it was less than 24 hours. We had the top decision maker for the company. So
that is another great example of how it works, and on both sides there. So a little bit slower, but also the leverage aspects of it. So that is fantastic. And then Brian, we discussed on the business versus in the business. How has your calendar kind of shifted from in the business to on the business thought? And what have you what did you deliberately stop doing, if that makes sense?
Oh boy, that's a great question. So as we talked about earlier, before I joined forces with Guide and Power and Shore Capital, I was doing everything, right? Anything and everything that had to do with the business. Going out teaching, giving electrical safety training, building all the training materials, accounting, you name it, everything and anything, developing websites, blog posts, you name it. And so, again, a lot of that has been taken off my plate, and quite honestly, probably not doing a very good job at some of those things, right? I mean, just outside of my skill set, monkeying around in websites is just not something that I'm trained to do or very good at. And so, again, a lot of that's been taken off my plate. But to Adam's point, it doesn't mean that you're going to lose all this work to do, right? There's still a lot of work to do, but now it's more focused on what it is you like to do and what you're good at doing, right? So we're bringing on additional electrical safety instructors, and so getting them trained and making sure that we go out and provide good electrical safety training, and building better training content, and all these sorts of things. So there's still a lot of work to do, integrating with other folks. Still a lot of work to do, but it's more focused, like Jeff had mentioned, on what you're good at doing, what you like to do. It's still a lot of hard work, and so my calendar is still pretty busy for sure. But again, hyper focused on what I like to do and what I'm good at doing.
And it sounds like there's more of an opportunity for you to focus on the actual, not the billable stuff, but how to grow the organization as a whole. So it sounds like you get to expand a lot more brain power around that particular item. Is that pretty accurate?
For sure.
That is awesome. And then I have another collective question for you guys. We all, as business owners, receive a barrage of offers to fund or buy our companies. It seems that Paul's approach was unique, and I know we've kind of talked about some of this, but what are some of those green flags for owners to look for when it comes to potential acquisitions? Again, we've all talked to 5, 10, 20 a month, whatever it may be. Again, what are some of the green flags you would look for if a company were to reach out to you that, say, wasn't Guidant, or what is he doing well that others that perhaps you have experience with did not? And that's an open one, so whoever wants to jump on first, feel free.
I'll take a shot at it.
All right.
For me, I guess there's really two things. So number one, again, I got into electrical safety training business to help people, right? And try to help them understand the hazard of electricity and keep themselves safe and go home to their families. And so to me, that was really one of the green flags. So if you're getting private equity companies calling you and asking you, about your business, and to me, do they share your value, right? Do they share your value of helping people and really understanding electricity and how to keep themselves safe? Paul chose the name Guidant Power, and the reason is we truly want to help you, guide you through this maze of electrical safety and help you improve your electrical safety throughout your company, and hopefully your people go home safe. The other to me was, one of the reasons I'll say that I started my own business is because I worked in a toxic environment, right? You work in a company, you just hate your job, just trying to drag yourself out of bed every morning to go to work. You don't get along with the people that you're working with, all of those things. And so you just throw up your hands and say, I'm going to start my own business and do my own thing. And quite frankly, I was very happy running my own business and doing my own thing. I shed a lot of those, that corporate, I'll call it again, toxic environment. And so I was very happy to get out of that situation. And so, quite frankly, I was a little hesitant to come back into that. Maybe this is going to be the same thing. And so, again, to me, the culture is very important. Right? Do you actually like the people that you're going to work with? Right? If you're sitting around thinking to yourself when the folks call you up and say, we would like to discuss, you joining us, or we buying you, or whatever that looks like, right? And you're saying to yourself, man, I wouldn't even want to sit down and have lunch with these people, right? That's probably not somebody that you want to go into business with, right? And so culture, again, is fantastic. Everybody gets along. Paul, everybody listens. We all, everybody's opinions respected. It's been just, again, very pleasant experience for me.
That is awesome. To your point, we kind of beat around, the culture piece, and I just wrapped up a interview with regards to culture and trying to find that. Do you think Paul did a good job of kind of explaining the culture, what it looked like, what it would work with? It doesn't sound like he's super high pressure in that, but was that one of the things that solidified your decision to go ahead and go the PE route?
For me, it was, for sure.
Gotcha. Chris, any similar experiences for you, or what's your take on it?
I'm trying to remember what the original question was. I think we ran a little deeper down the rabbit hole.
We did a little bit, but it's basically, so why was Paul's approach unique? And then what are some of those green flags that ultimately, and I know we've kind of touched on this already, but I wanted to ask it as a question for others that are being reached out to PE, but what are some of the green flags you look for in general? And then, how did Paul execute that, I guess, would be a great way to look at it.
Okay. I mean, I had mentioned before, Paul's approach, we'll call it soft shoe, version, getting to actually connect indirectly as opposed to the most common, which I think all of us on here have gotten, which is, hey, you got a phone call from somebody.
XYZ Private Capital.
Do I know you? Well, and they want to just instantly launch in. To me, those were just instant red flags, right? And I always try and be polite, and a lot of folks are. But as I mentioned before, I also wanted to be able to weed out really quick. If you weren't really interested in what we did, if you didn't give me some small measure of warmth at the beginning that I felt like this was a conversation worth happening, I was as quick as I could, I'd get off the phone, right? And I'd be polite. People that would send me emails and just say, hey, we're really interested. I'm like, hey, I'm all set. Thank you very much. And just because I don't want to be, I'm not going to ghost people. I will at least reply because I don't want to just keep sending it to me.
Exactly.
But for me, the green flag that I probably liked the most was let's just talk first. Learn a little more about us, as opposed to, I'm just going to tell you that your company is really valuable and we should add you into us. Like, who are you? Like, I don't even know you. And I've got to be interested. The person, my belief is you have to be interested, at least open to the concept, because you can't get to a point of making a decision until you learn some information, right? And it can't just be your ego gets blown up because someone, comes in and acts like they're going to spend a whole lot of money to buy your company from you. right? If you're at that point and you really just want to step out, more power to you, right? Get multiple bidders, get the highest price you possibly can, right? If you're not ready to step out yet, and that's really what we're talking about here with Micro PE and folks like Guiding Power and our team that's on this call, is we weren't ready to step out. We were ready to step up and step forward and start moving a lot faster than what we were able to do individually. Right? I'm proud of what my team did. We grew from 6 to almost 30 folks by the time we joined in. Now we're part of Guidance and we're up past, I don't know, somewhere around 75 or 80 people.
Wow.
Right? So I mean, we are making big strides forward. Some with the acquisition of new partners, a lot with just growing. And a comment I'd like to throw in, just because I don't know where we're at in this, so I don't forget this. When you had asked earlier about the concern that we have for our employees, right, and how they take it, and the concern that is the fear factor. I can speak specifically to like people in my group already. I told them, as we get bigger, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? It means we'll have more career choices, more opportunities for them to potentially consider, right, with respect to, well, when you're a really small company, you might not get a chance, to move into another direction, another division, another job. Now I already have 2 of my employees here in just several months in that are going to take different advancing roles, inside Guidance. That's fantastic,
Awesome.
right? I couldn't have offered that myself before joining in to be part of a bigger group. So the career advancement side, not so much for us. We're already running a company, honestly, right? Call it what it is. But for our employees, the people who have been loyal and committed and worked really hard and wore lots of hats themselves too, I think is a fantastic opportunity that Micro PE opens the door to.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. And a lot of that stuff is kind of like just woven into the fabric of an employee. Like a lot of people, all they really want, they want to be paid fairly and look for those growth opportunities. And I think a lot of the small businesses lose out on some great talent because they just simply aren't growing fast enough. And people are looking for greener pastures, or more opportunities where it makes more sense. And you're not necessarily going to get that in small business because we're capped again on cash flows and things of that nature. And you have to grow very conservatively, typically, unless you're using other people's money and doing those things. So you're inevitably, or I wouldn't say inevitably, there's a high probability that you're going to lose out on some great talent, not due to your actions and not treating them right, but simply because they have more grandiose ideas in mind for their future. So couldn't agree with you more on that front. I think that's extremely valid there. And so finally, one final question for you guys. We're getting pretty close here. All of you are now living the PE life. Would you do it again? And we'll kind of take this, one step at a time, and then pros and cons. Again, we like to be as transparent as possible in the process and want to give people as much food for thought that are in the same situation that you guys were before you got acquired. So, Chris, we'll start with you on that question.
All right. So the question is, would I do it again? Yeah, in a heartbeat. I didn't feel like there was anything left out of the process. So again, kudos back to Paul and Guidance in our particular situation, and for the PE and Shore Capital, who I think it pays to have experience. In their sense, they, like I said, that's one of their points. They've done more than 1,000 small companies like us. Purchases, building groups, growing large organizations. I'd do it in a heartbeat. I wish I had probably bumped into them a little sooner, for the sake of being at this place. Because again, I'm the old guy here, and I'm having fun with it, but eventually they're going to kick me out for greener pastures, as we continue to streak on forward.
Absolutely. And that is awesome. Jeff, same question to you, my friend.
Yeah, I would say without a doubt we'd do it again. What was interesting about when we decided to move forward and sell, we accidentally had 3 offers on the table at that time.
Wow.
And we did not go with the highest bidder. We went with the company that made the most sense. And looking back, definitely glad that we made that decision. So we did as much research as we could prior to moving forward, not just on who we were talking to, but the company itself. And anytime we would find somebody that knew about Shore, they basically just said congratulations. So
Really?
it was a really good indicator that we were making the right decision. So yeah, I'd do it again.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Adam, I know I'm sure the sentiments are echoed to be pretty similar there, but what's your take? Would you do it again?
I agree with Jeff. I mean, the only other thing that I would add with this conversation is to be true, to really understand your own motivations and make sure they align. I think, some of that's going to depend not only on the company you partner with, but also the stage that company's in. So making sure that whatever's promised to you in terms of what's your role going to look like, what do you expect too? I mean, I think some people probably have an expectation that isn't true to themselves. And so that needs to align not only internally, but externally with who you're going to partner with to really have a good partnership.
I think that's a super salient point. It's almost as if you had to do due diligence on your end as well, instead of getting caught by the shiny lights of the potential of being bought out. And so taking the due diligence and truly making sure that you were a fit. And it sounds like it was the ideal outcome in your particular situation. So that's awesome. And finally, Brian, give us your 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I would agree. I would do it again in a heartbeat. Nothing but good things to say. Again, a lot of resources come your way and a lot of help. And I would agree with what some of the other folks say. It takes time, right, to integrate all these things together. And, when we first got our vice president of sales, and, I thought, oh, man, we better start gearing up. We're going to have a ton of training coming up, and I better hire a bunch of instructors and, a lot of things. But it takes time, right? And so keeping that in mind, be patient. It's been a great experience for me.
That is awesome, gentlemen. And that wraps up our formal question sets here. This has been a highly thought-provoking and educational conversation, and I truly thank each of you for taking the time out of your chaotic schedules. As we know, we're all wearing the hat still, and growth is happening at a rapid pace there with Guidant. But thanks again for taking time to sit down with us and help enlighten small business owners who may be looking to take the next leap into the private equity or growing their companies. And as always, if you guys are open to it, what would be the best way for folks to reach out to you if they have questions about it? Obviously, not a requirement here. The primary emphasis is making sure that we can share as many valuable insights and lessons that we can for folks. But if you're open to it, what would be the best way for folks to reach out to you with questions about Guidant or life in general as it comes to PE acquisitions? Christopher?
I mean, I guess short of just throwing our own emails right out on top here, I mean, ours is an easy one. Send it to sales@monroeinfrared.com.
Gotcha.
Because I see all of those that come through, even though they route to different people. And just if anybody wanted to reach out to me, you're absolutely welcome to. Just literally say, to Christopher, right? And then it'll help stand out, so you don't get the sales manager saying, "Yeah, what do you want to buy?" Let's get the focus. You want to ask a question.
No, absolutely. And traditionally, we do tag you guys. If you're on LinkedIn and maintain a good presence over there, we tag you in the clip release as well, so folks can find you that way as well. So
Micah,
actually, I'll that probably make it easier for you, I think. But Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, you can reach me at Adam's cell phone number. I can give that to you.
We'll post it in big letters at the bottom here, so everybody has Adam's number.
It's 50.
we have a info@7dconsultants.com would reach.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to let you guys websites and things with the with the initial long form interview that we do, so folks can reach out to you. Hopefully, and not too much spam sends Adam, since we're going to put that phone number up there for him.
Thanks.
Well, gentlemen, thank you again so much for taking the time out of your schedules to chat with me today. And this will drop here in about a month or so, maybe a little bit sooner, depending on the holiday routine and how fast I wrap up the other ones. But truly, truly valuable from the knowledge, the insights, and just the conversation alone. And thank you again for all joining us on the Power Relay here. And until next time, Micah out.
Thanks for tuning in to the Power Relay with Micah Clay. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a review. For more insights, contact info, job offerings, and other content, check out our Linktree sites at Linktree/Micah W. Clay or Linktree/Southern Staffing. We'd love to hear any feedback. And if you know anyone we should highlight, feel free to drop us a message. As always, thanks to those who work tirelessly to keep the lights on. Until next time.